Hello, I'm Jessica Le Masurier, and I'm joined today by the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi.
Hello.
Hello. Perhaps your most pressing dossier is Iran. Can you tell us how close you believe Iran now is to developing a nuclear weapon?
Iran, of course, the program has been severely damaged. The enrichment activity and work, all these capacities that the country used to have almost disappeared. It doesn't mean that Iran doesn't have capacities. They have the know-how, the knowledge, and also, and importantly, the material, the nuclear material that had been produced at a very high level of enrichment, which is what you need in case you want to develop a nuclear weapon, is still there. As of today, there is very little in terms of active activity in Iran. One must say that the country has a nuclear power plant in the south of the country. There are a number of activities that are ongoing and continuing, but in this particular area, at the source of concerns, discussions, and perhaps the use of force, there is not much activity as we speak.
So where is Iran making this enriched uranium?
Iran is no longer enriching uranium. It doesn't mean that they could, in the future, do something, but the facilities where they were doing that in Natanz, in Isfahan, in Fordo, were the three sites that were attacked by Israel and then the United States. So the infrastructure there has been damaged.
It's been damaged, but that hasn't necessarily destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities or the enriched uranium that it had already. So how far is Iran from being able to turn that enriched uranium into weapons, and how many weapons could it make?
The physical damage has been very, very important. So to reconstruct that industrial technological base, Iran would need time. Some say 1 year, some say even more than 1 year. The material is still there, and the material would allow them to manufacture a few nuclear weapons.
To what extent do you think that the Israeli and US bombing of Iran's nuclear sites set back diplomatic efforts?
The diplomatic efforts, of course, suffered. At this time, in June, we passed from diplomacy to the use of force. Now we have to go back to diplomacy.
So to what extent did it make you uncomfortable knowing that an IAEA report saying that, Iran was in contravention of some of its responsibilities, that was arguably used as a pretext for Israel and the US to bomb Iran?
It was regrettable that some were saying that, but no one would seriously believe that what happened because there was some report of the IAEA. And by the way, this report was not saying anything particularly new. What was said in my report in June had already been said several times before, that Iran was not cooperating enough.
But the fact of the matter remains that the report was in many ways politicized. How can you avoid that happening in the future and your work being politicized to justify violence, attacks?
I understand the point. This is inevitable because of the nature of the things we are dealing with here. And when we report on something and when we say something alternatively, those who are on one side or the other, one day they will say, Mr. Grossi or the IAEA is in the pocket of the other side. And then the next day, the other side says, or those who are, sympathizers, they say, no, he is carrying the water of the other side. You know what that means to me? That we are doing the right thing.
Let's turn to Ukraine now. How serious is the situation at Zaporizhzhia power plant, and what progress have you managed to make to defuse the situation there in your talks with Putin and Zelensky and other world leaders?
The situation continues to be extremely volatile. The nuclear power plant is still where it is. It's at the front line, and this is a combat zone. The IAEA mediated a truce, which was necessary for both sides to do some essential repair work on the power lines that bring electricity to the plant so it can continue cooling down the reactors.
But to what extent is there still a risk of nuclear fallout, a nuclear catastrophe that could impact Europe?
Had we not been able to broker this agreement between the two sides, then the possibility of this emergency generators running out of petrol or fuel could be there, and you could have a radiological accident. And on top of that, you still have a lot of activity, drones coming in. We see a lot of artillery is being used not so far from the plant. We have a team there, so we are the only international organization independently operating in a combat zone. At the moment, and until we get to peace, it's a work of containment.
With all of this on your plate, how do you have time or even the desire to run for Secretary General? You've announced your candidacy. What drives you?
What we have been discussing. It's because of what I have told you. It's because we see that there is a need for diplomacy, there is a need for mediation, there is a need for an interlocutor that is accepted by both.
In the 80-year history of the United Nations, there has never been a female Secretary General, and there's a strong push for the next one to be a woman. What are your thoughts on that, considering that there are some very well-qualified, very strong female candidates who've already thrown their hats into the ring?
I think an election to any post is not a matter of gender. And so I think it's a matter of who can be the person that can lead the organization at this time of severe international crisis in the best possible way.
Anyone who's running for Secretary General needs to win favour with the P5.
Yes.
You've decided to stay in your role with the IAEA. Is there not possibly an ethical issue there, considering that you may be finding yourself treading a fine line, trying to please member states as you go about your job as Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency?
No, I would say on the contrary. Stepping aside would be the easy thing to do. Staying in what I do is the right thing, because I have a big responsibility on my shoulders. As we were discussing, Iran, Ukraine, many other things. When people say he might be wishing to please, am I going to be able to please all? When I please someone, theoretically, you have to admit that I'm displeasing somebody else.
Who is Rafael Grossi? Tell people who don't know much about you.
Rafael Grossi is a guy that is a diplomat. I started very young, at 22. And as a professional diplomat, I've been working all my life for international peace and security, nationally and internationally, at the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons before, at the IAEA in a different position. So the good thing about me, for those who have to think whether they would entrust me with this huge responsibility, is that they can have a track record to look at, to decide whether they like it or not.
Is football more important than diplomacy?
Well, football is an imitation of life in a very, very, very nice way. And as an Argentine with Italian roots, for me, it's very important.
So football's good training for diplomats?
Oh, yes, it is, physically and mentally.
Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24, Rafael Grossi.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.